Hey, welcome back. Rates and unit. It's Mr. Romanovich and Mr. McKenzie. And we're doing rates and unit rates. Our standard is 6RP2. Understand the concept of a unit rate and how it's related to a ratio. And by the end of this, you will be able to say, I can find a rate and convert it to a unit into a unit rate. This is a good opportunity to pause your video and make sure you get all of this down.
That was very Vanna White of you. All right, here's our first vocabulary term. It is a rate. A rate is a ratio. So a good way to think about it, other than my awful line there, is that it's going to look like a fraction again. But it's comparing two different quantities. But the key is these are going to be things that have different units. So you're comparing, it's not boys to girls or, triangles to squares that are the same kind of thing. They're going to be completely different. So fill in our definition, or write down our definition, and then this note here. For a rate, you always need to include the answers or the units in your answer. I'll eventually say it right. So it's not just numbers, you're going to have the units that go along with it. Okay? When you get that done, we're going to do our first example. Please write down the whole example, not just our answer. But this one just says write it as a rate. So the rule of thumb is we're going to take our first number, 45 oranges, over 5 minutes. We don't need to do anything else with it for the moment. We just want to write it as a rate. So we're going to write it as a fraction, but including those units in there.
So something unique about rates is a unit rate. And a unit rate then is a rate that has a denominator of 1. So you've got it down to 1, and as we know, 1 is a unit. So to write the rate as a unit rate, we're going to do the actual division that we set up with that fraction. That is to divide the numerator and the denominator, and then we're going to find the rate. Divide the numerator and denominator of the rate by the denominator.
I know, it's kind of weird. Basically, you're going to divide everything by the denominator. That's your rule of thumb. Yeah, it's a little wordy there.
I see what you're saying. So in our example here, we have Samantha, and she picked 45 oranges in 5 minutes. Congrats, Samantha. And then if we write that as a rate first, we have 45 oranges over 5 minutes. Our numerator is 45 oranges. Our denominator is 5 minutes. And then to find it as a unit rate, we would divide numerator by denominator, giving us 45 divided by 5, 5 divided by 5, giving us 9 oranges per minute, or 9 oranges over 1 minute. And then we know that for every minute, she picked 9 oranges.
So listen for that word per that Mr. Romanovich used. That's kind of your code for 9 oranges per 1 minute. Those are the two parts of your fraction when you write it as a rate. That per is kind of like your fraction bar when you're setting up the problem. So let's see this in action. Mr. Romanovich is going to start us with our first one here. We're going to write each one as a unit rate.
So the first one, we've got 125 feet in 5 seconds. So we'll make 125 feet our numerator, 5 seconds our denominator. Then we'll divide both numerator and denominator by the denominator. And we have 125 divided by 5 is 25, giving us 25 feet in our numerator, and 5 seconds divided by 5 is 1 second in our denominator, which gives us a unit rate of 25 feet per second.
So feel free to write your final answer in either form there. Next one, 12 meters in 28 seconds. Unless the problem tells you otherwise, we usually just leave the numbers in the order they're there. So 12 meters on top, 28 seconds on the bottom. We're going to divide everything by our denominator. So you never have to think about what to divide by. It's just always with your denominator. This one's going to be ugly.
So I pulled out my calculator, and when we did this, what we found was that our numerator ends up being 0.428 if you want to go to the fourth digit and round.
So we rounded it off. So that's going to be meters still.
Over 1 second.
Over 1 second. The denominator is always going to be just one of it. That's why it's called a unit rate. It's per one of something. All right, let's see our next one.
So the next one we'll set up, we have 360 miles as our numerator. Then 12 gallons of gasoline as our denominator. Then we're going to divide both by the denominator, 360 divided by 12, 12 gallons divided by 12, which is going to give us 30 miles in our numerator, and a good old 1 gallon in our denominator, which tells us it's the unit rate, so it's 30 miles per gallon.
Sorry, I'm slow in my writing there. All right, last one. Notice that we have a little star next to this one. Our general rule of thumb is whatever order the numbers were in the problem, that's how we set it up. 360 over 12. For this one, we have 4 potted plants for $88. A good rule of thumb is anytime there's money involved in the problem, the money goes on top. We always want to know how much money per potted plant. It wouldn't really make sense to know how much of a potted plant I could buy for $1. I'm never going to buy 1/8 of a potted plant, so that's not useful. So if we leave the money on top, then it's how many dollars per plant. So in this case, it's $88 for 4 plants. To make it a unit rate, we always divide by our denominator, divide by 4. So I get, what's that going to be, $22? Can't believe I had to think about that. Per potted plant. Money always goes on top. Because I can break money into pieces, it's harder to break a plant into pieces. All right, here's our last 2. Your turn to give those a try. So go ahead, pause, write down the whole problem, write it as a rate, turn them into unit rate, and try to answer each of the questions, and then we'll go over it together. We really should put in music, like Jeopardy theme song.
If they pause it, they didn't even see that.
But
well,
now
they have to watch it.
All right, Mr. Romanovich, walk us through the first one.
Okay, here we got Central Subs made 27 sandwiches using 12 pounds of turkey. How much turkey was used per sandwich? So key in setting this up is, let's start with, what is the question asking us to do? If the question is asking us to do, what is the turkey used per sandwich, we need turkey as the numerator and sandwiches as our denominator. So if I set that up with just the units first, writing turkey over sandwiches, then I can go back in the problem and find the numbers that I need. When I look in the problem, Central Subs made 27 sandwiches using 12 pounds. There's my thing. So I have 12 pounds of turkey. And then I know that I had 27 sandwiches because I already read that. So I have 12 pounds of turkey in 27 sandwiches. I get my handy dandy calculator. Divide numerator, divide denominator by 27. And that gives me every sandwich having about 44 hundredths of a pound of turkey.
Remember, our abbreviation for pound is LB. It's British. So in this case, we had to round it off, but now we know how much turkey goes into each one of those sandwiches. Chances are you did it the opposite way because you're used to just putting the first number on top, the second number on the bottom. So listen for those clues Mr. Romanovich gave you. Read the problem. It says turkey per sandwich. So it's telling you what order to take the numbers in. Last one, Marcella divided 40.8 gallons of paint among 8 containers. We want to know how much paint is in each container. So we want gallons of paint on top. We want containers on the bottom. You think my writing would be getting better by now. 40.8 gallons. That goes on top. 8 containers on the bottom. And then remember our rule. To make it a unit rate, we want to make the denominator into a 1, so we want to divide by our denominator, divide by 8. So we should get 5.1 gallons of paint per container. So you can write it out as kind of a statement, or 5.1 gallons over 1 container. Hope that makes sense. We'll practice a little bit more tomorrow in class.
Woo.